Hi, everyone. I'm James Garbutt.
And I'm Denny Dumas.
And this is the Garbutt Dumas Real Estate Podcast.
Jamie, we just talked about March being the busiest month on record ever in Greater Vancouver. April probably will beat that.
I think so.
So what does that mean? That means there's a lot of people buying.
A lot of buyers, a lot of sellers. And these buyers finally are seeing more selection to buy. Mm-hmm. The floodgates have opened. The listings are out.
So let's share some, I don't know if we necessarily want to say advice, but some points to think about, some cautions potentially when you are looking to buy this spring and into the summer. A couple things I think we want to mention right away is that the market is still very, very active. There's more inventory. So buyer demand has kind of been spread out a little bit. The bidding war that gets 15 plus offers is a little more few and far between than it was in January, February, as it was pretty common because there just wasn't much supply. But that doesn't mean, like potentially you've heard, that the market is slowing down. It just means that there's more selection and buyer demand is kind of spread out. So I think understand that a lot of places are still selling subject free. It is extremely important this spring to be very prepared to make a strong offer when you see a home that you love. Being prepared means doing all your due diligence pre-offer potentially, doing a home inspection, making sure that your finances are in order so you can make a strong offer when you see something that you love.
Just to touch on that, like the number one thing from a buyer's end right now is make sure your financing's in order.
Yeah.
Like that's what you have the most control of. That your mortgage specialist has all your documents so that when you do take the leap, assuming that you're buying in these, multiple offer conditions, that you're doing everything you can to improve your chances. Yeah. I interrupted you. I apologize.
That's okay. One of the questions we get very, very often is, does everything sell over asking? How much over asking do I have to pay? And understand that in any market, there's going to be listings that price high. There's going to be listings that price low to try to get activity, depending on the seller's situation. So understand that list price is a strategy. Every situation is a little different. Just know that the ones that are priced aggressively or conservatively are likely going to sell very quickly and with multiple offers and often subject free.
When you're in the listing side, it's just less predictable nowadays. We've had more often than not, we're selling in multiple offers, but comparatively to say February versus April 2021, the difference in April is there's more listings available. In February, we were all glued to the MLS because there wasn't much to look at. And every time there was a decent house that would come up, it was a predictable outcome that there would be multiple people going at it. It didn't matter what it was priced at. The market would take it away. Mm-hmm. And in the last 30 days, on our team, we've had a number of experiences where a house or even a townhouse have struggled to sell or not had the showings that were anticipated. Mm-hmm. We had one out in Langley that, fortunately, I guess the positive here is it didn't have the showings, but offers still showed up. So we had a house that could have had dozens of showings, but it had a half a dozen showings, call it. And the buyers that came through the door, a lot of them were burned by previous offers. So they're just kind of coming in with this attitude of list price doesn't matter. Who knows what this one's going to go for? How much is this going to sell? Are you priced where it should be, or is this going to tee up for a bidding war? And they didn't know in this particular case that it was a relatively quiet listing, but it was the right product of the time. It was just a quiet moment. Like it didn't have a suite. It was 1.2 million. Anyway, I'm mentioning this is because Langley, one of the hotter products, detached homes, one of the hotter products. But a month ago, we sold a home that didn't get many showings and just barely got a bidding war. And then last week, from that experience, priced another home out in Cloverdale, same price point, but it had a basement suite. Thought, okay, you know what? That Langley one was slower than expected. This one might be slower than expected. And then this one got 100 showings and 18 offers last week. A few months ago, I did an episode about underpricing your listings and that being a bad thing in a way and causing too much work and frustration. And in this particular case, I own it. It was my fault, but we underpriced the listing. We didn't know we underpriced it until we were on the market and just saw wave after wave of call come in. But I guess I'm mentioning this is because we are on the front lines. We see it all the time. This one, I underpriced because it backed onto Fraser Highway in 188th and just didn't know how many people would be open with that backyard. But after 18 offers and over $200,000 sale price above list, I was wrong. I was wrong. It took a lot. It was a great outcome. Wouldn't change a thing, but it was a lot more work to get there than if it was priced a little higher.
I think it's an important note to even just specify that predictability is very, very challenging right now when inventory increases. In January, February, a listing was very predictable. You could price it at $999. You knew it was going to get 15 offers, 50 showings, and sell $200K over and sell for 1.2. Very predictable that the activity was going to be there. When inventory picks up like this, it is a lot more challenging to predict what the outcome is going to be, which is why we've done episodes on pinpointing a list price that is accurate versus just listing at a random number and seeing where the market takes it. But on the buy side, I think it's important too that the predictability of that listing is a challenge, which means don't count it out. If you, like, I guess where I'm coming from with this point is when we have listings and we have 15 showings on a Saturday, often there's buyers that come through or we'll follow up with agents and their feedback is, my buyer doesn't want to compete. And then my response is, I'm reaching out to you because you're not competing. Like if I had 7 offers, I wouldn't be calling every single showing that came through 7 days ago, right? So I guess...
Are you getting buyers that might not offer that would be willing to pay full price in this instance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we even had one last night that an agent, Adam, had a condo and he had requested feedback from a handful of agents that came through over the weekend. And one of them, this was a strange one. We were priced at $499. The last sale in the building, I think, was about $525-ish. Ours was a lower floor and not necessarily a great outlook. So probably priced correctly. But one of the agents just replied saying, my buyer is unwilling to go to $580.
We're priced at $499.
And Adam just replies saying, okay, so what is that? Like, do they want to write or not?
Bring us an offer for $579.
Yeah. And I guess from a buyer perspective, don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to write an offer. Focus on market value. Don't focus on list price. We get a lot of, and I want to adjust our terminology a bit in this spring market is I want to avoid people using the term bidding war. Bidding war is a scary term and it sounds like a buyer perspective is I'm overpaying for this because I'm in a bidding war versus multiple offers. Figure out the market value, use your agent's knowledge and pick a market value. The list price is irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything. It's not a sale price. It's not a market value. Find market value, regardless of whether there are multiple offers. Write an offer that you feel comfortable with. And if you lose, move on. But this term bidding war, I think people get caught up in it and they get frightened away that they're overpaying for something.
Yeah. I think in my example with those homes in Cloverdale and Langley, the purpose of that is on the listing side, sometimes we don't know what to expect on a listing. Mm-hmm. And so if the buyer's already emotionally like burned after missing out on a few offers and they go into the next one and they see a busy open house, I get that feeling. Mm-hmm. There's some obvious candidates. Like I've been outside of houses and you name the city where there's lineups of people and group after group. And you can tell by when you scheduled the appointment, they had 4 hours booked and the next day was 4 hours booked as well. Mm-hmm. Those particular cases where you see a house that gets 100 showings or 50 plus showings in a weekend, yeah, I understand those cases. You could just emotionally say, you know what, I'm not going to get in this madness, write it out. But don't assume that everyone is experiencing that. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the times these houses might be getting a dozen showings. And you might think it's like the other one, but it's a completely different scenario. And, I would say anytime there's less than, I'm going to throw up an arbitrary number here, but if you're ever in a multiple offers situation where there's 1 to 3 or 4 offers, there's a chance. It's the moment it starts becoming 6 or more that you can decide, unless you really like it, if you're on the fence, you can decide, you can walk away from that one if you choose to. Yeah. This one in Cloverdale got 18 offers, and I can assure you 10 of them were wasting their time. But some of the best sale prices that we've had, and from a listing side, or some of the best opportunities buyers have had is still in multiple offer scenarios, but it's when there's 1 to 3. And from a buyer's perspective, we had a buyer that just won out against, I think it was like 4 offers, but they were the 3rd highest price with the cleanest terms. So they beat 2 offers at a higher price, but they had cleaner terms. And if in a lot of scenarios, if I mentioned to a buyer, you're up against 3 other offers, and this particular group, it was on their 4th offer that they put out there. Some people just be frustrated and say, you know what, they're just trying to find an excuse in the house that they don't like a little bit and say, but we're just not going to get in the mix with this one just because it's not perfect and it's got this many offers anyway. Mm-hmm. I think the most important characteristic for a buyer buying in this market, particularly with detached, is resilience. Totally. It's just keep trying. You just got to keep trying. And if you are going to give up on an instance, make it those ones that are clear, like dozen offer candidates. You can give up on those ones if you choose, but only give up on them when you know. Because you never know. You got to see the place. You got to, if you're a buyer, I think the goal is, well, one, see everything that ticks the boxes. And when you go into something you like, emit confidence. Like that's the moment that may be the only moment that the listing agent sees you and can make a judgment call on you if you end up being an offer. And if you go in there and start, talking about how you have to sell something, how you're not sure about, you complain about all the defects of the home, the wear and tear, just uncertainty. You want to, it's not going to be perceived as well if the agent's catching on to that. But if you walk into the home and you share that you love it and that nothing's a big deal to you and your financing's solid and you're just emitting confidence left, right, and center and being likable and charming, that might leave a lasting impression on the agent that might edge you out in a future offer scenario that may get you that second chance or may get you the winning offer.
It absolutely makes a difference.
Yeah.
And in multiple offers, if you're memorable when you walk through and if your agent is memorable, even more importantly maybe, or has a really good reputation, it can absolutely mean selecting your offer or like picking you to work with and you getting that extra phone call or whatever it may be. When it comes down to someone putting in a deposit, or let's say you have 3 offers and all 3 have subjects. So having a buyer remove subjects, that confidence that Jamie's talking about, those interactions as you go through a listing mean a lot. Like if there is an agent that you've never heard of that wrote a strange email or wrote nothing in an email, just forwards an offer versus someone that you've had 9 phone calls and texts with, sharing information back and forth. You have a letter about the buyer coming in with it. You remember the buyer, that they can't, they're a young family, they had a 2-year-old daughter, whatever. Those make a big difference. And when you're sitting in front of a seller as a listing agent, you're saying, hey, I don't know who this one is. Here's their offer. This is a young family. The agent was fantastic. He was great to communicate. She was great to communicate with. They asked a lot of really great questions. I feel like they know everything that we know about your home. So there probably won't be any surprises or less likelihood of a surprise. They're a strong candidate. I don't know who this is. It makes a big difference.
When you're on the listing side, it's a hard thing to, when you have a seller that is overwhelmed, they get all these offers in and they get a couple, it gets down to the last, say, 2 or 3 good ones. And if you're the realtor and you've put faces behind those offers and you see 2 great families, it's hard to choose. Mm-hmm. So those little gestures though, like if say the one family just emitted more confidence and the realtor from that family checked in a little bit more. I mean, I think when we sold a place up in North Van last week, the agent behind the deal did a great job of checking in throughout the progress. How many after the weekend, how many inspections were booked? Clients are very serious. I think we're going to offer. Just keep me posted with interest. Check in a few days later. Yeah. Check in a few days later. And he just he always emitted confidence. He always he asked the right questions to kind of get the gauge of interest levels, and it worked out for him. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what the realtor can do. And the buyer has their part of just being ready for being in a position to take the financial risk. And also when they're at the home, it is in some people's nature to nitpick a house just because that's how they're wired. They have to point out the flaws to try to bring the price down. But in a lot of cases these days, you're not negotiating against the seller. You're negotiating against the other buyers, and you nitpicking the house and bringing it down. if you're walking to a home like one of our listings and we're the agent, we know what we have. Just the agent's often going to know what they have, in period. And the walking around nitpicking the house, that may work in the worst of markets when you have an overpriced listing and you're struggling to sell. Yes, absolutely. Butcher it apart. But in today's environment, if you think you might want to buy the home, that tactic doesn't really work.
From a realtor perspective too, understand that the communication is very, very important. Yeah. I had someone call me yesterday on a new listing that listed Monday, and we priced it on the lower end. It's a really nice craftsman style 1930s home that is maintained really well, has a fantastic yard, really good street and neighborhood. And he called and said, "Would you guys look at an offer early?" And I said, "Have to be a really good one." And he said, "Oh, are you expecting over asking?" I said, "Yeah. Like the last few sales are $100,000 over what we listed at." Anyway, it's just like ask the right questions and communicate well.
Yeah. And recognize the true value of the property. Like a lot of my instances come to detached because I can't help but think of how some buyers and agents and just in general, people focus on, say, an electrical panel that needs updating and dated bathroom electrical panel, whether it's old plumbing or uncertain drain tile, always uncertain drain tile. But the house is $100,000 of value and the land is $1.4 million in value. Yeah. And you're focused on the electrical panel. And I think that's taking a real step back and recognizing that in a lot of these cases, 90% of the value is in land with the entry price point homes. It is important to know what you're getting into. But when you're in a seller's market, trying to get a house in a good neighborhood, you kind of have to be okay with surprises. You can either get the pre-inspection and know everything that you're getting into, which I think is great, knowing what you're getting into the home. Just don't think it gets you a better deal on the home. But or you buy a home at $1.6 million and just have a $50,000 surprise budget, or $30,000 surprise budget, and that is arguably, it's a lot of money on its own, but it's a small percentage of the purchase. And in this kind of market, if you looked at going in with that strategy in January versus buying in April, you'd already made money on your purchase in January by April.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
if you are trying, as you say,
tips.
And going into multiple offers this year, as a buyer, it's important to understand that a small percentage of realtors deal with multiple offers on the listing side well. So what that means is the likelihood, and we get this question all the time from buyers, are they going to call me and give me a second chance? And I would say in 80% of scenarios, the answer is no.
80% no callback.
It is unbelievably outrageous.
That's how bad you're.
It is so ridiculous. Jamie. Yeah. So for consumers out there, for realtors, they know what TouchBase is, but for consumers, TouchBase is like an internal messaging system through our MLS system between realtors. So we had a condo, a buyer offer on a condo a couple weeks ago. I think offers were due at 5 p.m. At 5:05 p.m., no communication from the agent. Monica had sent in the offer. She didn't know if she was up against 6, 12, 100, 2,000 offers. Who knows? We get a TouchBase at 5:05 that says, "Hey, we received 6 offers. You have 5 minutes to send in a new offer if you want. Otherwise, we're dealing with you." Understand, TouchBase is a messaging system that sends us emails that people request showings with. So the likelihood that any one of the 6 offers is going to see that in 5 minutes is extremely low, right? It's just unbelievable. It maybe 80% is high because I'm speaking out of a little bit of frustration of how poorly a lot of them have been handled this year. But as a buyer, the line I always use with them is, let's find market value. Let's go in with a number that if you lost the property by $5,000 or $10,000, you wouldn't be upset. You would say, "Oh, it was more than I was willing to pay." Because the likelihood of you getting a call back right now, I think, is pretty low. Unless there's agents that we know really well. And in the markets that we work in often, we often run into agents that we've dealt with in the past and we understand how they deal with multiple offers. And a lot of them don't call back. So our suggestion is, hey, You're not going to get a call back going with the best that you want to go in with, and then let's move on if we don't get it.
I think I'm going to be a little more generous than Denny's stat. I'm going to say if your offer is in the running from the buyer's side, I'm going to say it's, I use the term 50-50 that you're going to get a call back. And maybe I'm wrong. I mean, you put up more offers than I have lately, Denny, so your stat may be more accurate, but I know you shoot from the hip too. So, but when we're talking about things that a buyer's agent can do after they know the buyers like the property, you saw it on the weekend, buyers emit confidence, they saw the charming family and tried to sell the listing agent, you leave that show and say, hey, you know what? We've missed out on 4 offers already. Hopefully this is the one. So you do all those sappy things to try to generate emotion. Buyer's agent checks in on the Monday. If the offers are on, say, Wednesday, you follow up after the weekend, you follow up morning of offers, you follow up leading right up to offers for hints, clues, and signs of interest levels. And even if you do everything right, you're charming and you even ask for it. Say, hey, look, if we're close, please let me know. I'll do it. I'll bring it to my client, see if they can improve in any way. You still may not get that call back. So just even if you are blunt in asking for it and doing everything right, and not blunt, but like soft, like just requesting for feedback. You submitted the offer. You've been in touch for a week. You have a good offer. You're subject free and 100,000 over list. You still may not get any inclination on where your offer stands with others. And that's where the frustration that you're hearing from Denny on the stat. And we run into it weekly, and it's probably not going to change. I would hope it would change for the better. It's not how we deal with offers, but it is the most important part of the sale, is those final hours of the offer. And it really, the frustrating part is when you're a realtor, you spend so much time and energy trying to get your business to the point where you get the for sale signs in front of the houses. And then when you get the listing, you're thrilled. And then you get the photos and video and floor plan, and you market like crazy. But the part that matters the most is the offers and those final hours. That's what matters the most out of everything to get you to that point of actually getting an offer as a listing agent.
Yeah.
That there's certain things that can't slip there. And one is letting everyone know how many offers they have. And if it didn't work, we wouldn't be saying this. But when you have the good offers that come through, giving them a second chance to improve or giving them feedback of where they stand, it works. And it's not like it works. It doesn't work 100% of the time. It works probably 90% of the time. So that simple call that comes back at the end usually amounts to a better outcome from the sellers. Yes, in a traditional way, it may not honor the first and best offer at the start. But in this particular market, there's so much guessing going on that that feedback is needed. That feedback leads to a better outcome for your seller. And if you're representing your seller, I think I'd ignore the principle of the first offer that came in, and I would abide by the principle of these are a lot of confused buyers that really want the home, and some of them need to know that they need to approve their offer. And the seller is going to get a higher price by having those conversations 90% of the time. That is all. Yeah. That's quite the rant, Denny, but the final hours matter is really what matters.
It is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And that's why in any listing appointment, we've done podcasts on this, I say 3 important questions to ask a realtor before you list your home. And if they don't give you the right answer, understand that you're leaving money on the table. How do you market? How do you show the property? How do you handle multiple offers? That third one is by far the most important.
So to add to that, tips for buyers again, letter, how much the home means to you, what that home is going to mean for you and your family, a photo of you and your family, deposit in hand.
So the letter is important. It's very important. It can win, and it has won for our buyers this year multiple times, but it's important to edit the letter. Don't use the same letter for every property. We got one last night. We got one last night, and it was actually a really nice letter. It had a picture of the family. It had like sections. So it was like who we are, what we love about your home. And under what we love about your home, I just like skimmed through it really quickly because Adam was dealing with that, those offers. I skimmed through it. And the first line is, we really love the downstairs extra space. And in my head, I'm thinking, this is a 2-bedroom condo. what downstairs? And then I text Adam. I'm like, hey, did you add a floor that I didn't know about? But anyway,
yeah.
Edit the letter.
So, but those things, letter, photo, and deposit in hand can be the decision maker. And, from a buyer's agent's perspective, do your due diligence early so that you are confident you can offer subject free without having a heart attack after. That might mean an oil tank scan. It might mean, building permit history, whatever it is. And then, from the buyer's side, resilience is number one today. Just keep trying. We're having this podcast late April. It's probably going to be launched in May. May and June, when people ask me, when should I sell my home? I always say, every year's different. You never tell the future, but I've always had the best luck in May and June. And if you're talking about typical seasonality of a real estate market, May and June are typically the most active months. They're the best months for sellers in a normal market. In a climbing market, the best month for sellers is December, because every month climbs month over month. But when you don't know the future, May and June are the most active months. And it's the month that I've always kind of targeted when I'm selling a personal property. And I guess why I'm mentioning that is if you're a seller, it's time to get serious about the sale. I wouldn't, yes, you can try at a higher price if that means a higher list price in May, but with the intent to adjust it in June. But you don't want to leave May and June unsold. If you went these next 2 months without selling, you're going to end up either putting yourself in a position where you're hoping the market comes up to meet you, or you're going to have to get more aggressive in July and August. And in a typical year, that's when it may slow down. Mm-hmm. So May and June, busiest months. So on the buy side, expect the most supply coming up. So that's good news. You're going to have more supply than ever. And I always kind of think if you're buying, usually you're buying for lifestyle, you're going to live there. I think having selection is more important than playing that market timing game. Because if you wait for the fall in hopes that it's a down market, well, it might not be a down market and you might just have less to look for.
Totally.
So if what you're looking for is, well, maybe not a box in the sky, but a house or a townhouse, and it's a pretty desirable product, May and June's going to have a lot of selection for you. Get aggressive, be resilient, get those letters out there, be charming.
Be prepared.
Yeah, be 100%. Prepared.
I like it. That was excellent.
All right, that's it. Let's call it at that.
I feel like we're really changing lives out here, Joe.
Well, if more people get the home they want, that's
there you go.
These little wins.